You said something, or maybe they said something, and now it's 3 days later and you're standing in the shower and you're back in that room. You can feel the temperature of it, the pause that went a half second too long, the thing you wish you'd said, the thing you're not sure you should have said. Your jaw is doing that thing it does, and you haven't even had your coffee yet. This is the one that lives in you, not the big blow up, not the obvious conflict, the conversation that looked fine on the outside, professional even, but something got snagged. And 3 days later, your brain is still pulling at the thread. We're going to talk about what's actually happening in your brain right now, and more importantly, how to train through it. Here's the first thing worth knowing. Your brain did not malfunction. It did exactly what it was built to do. When a social interaction carries any ambiguity, a tone you couldn't read, feedback that landed sideways, something left unresolved, your brain flags it as a potential threat, not to hurt you, to protect you. Unfinished, socially ambiguous, monitor this. And then it keeps monitoring. There's a network in your brain called the default mode network. It's what activates when you're not focused on an external task. When you're in the shower, when you're driving, when you're lying awake at 3 a.m. At Forte, we call it drift. And drift loves an unresolved social situation. It will return to it the way your tongue returns to a sore tooth. Not because something is wrong with you, because your brain is doing its job. It's designed to process ambiguity, to rehearse, to try to find the ending the situation didn't give you. The neuroscience here is clear. When your brain encounters social rejection or ambiguity, it activates the same regions that process physical pain. Your anterior cingulate cortex lights up. Your insula activates. Your brain is treating this like an alarm system. It's not a flaw. It's your threat detection system working exactly as it was designed. The problem is that drift doesn't always process toward resolution. Sometimes it just loops. You rerun the exchange. You recast yourself as a smarter, calmer, more prepared person. You imagine the worst version of how the other person interpreted what you said. You build a case, then you build the counter case, and somewhere around day 3, you realize you've been living in a conversation that actually ended 72 hours ago. The neuroimaging research is striking. When your brain gets stuck in ruminating loops, the connectivity between the default mode network and your emotional processing centers strengthens. The more you replay it, the more accessible that replay becomes. That's neuroplasticity, but it's working against you when you're in an untrained pattern. And without a deliberate interruption, the groove just deepens. Here's the mechanism worth understanding. Your brain has 2 broad modes that actually matter. Drift, the default mode network that runs in the background, reviews the past, imagines the future, narrates your social world. It's essential. This is where you process memory, where you imagine the future, where you model other people's minds. And then there's drive, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that is active, directed, present, focused. This is where you make decisions, where you take deliberate action, where you hold clarity. Drift and drive don't run at full power at the same time. When one is up, the other is relatively down. And this isn't a design flaw. It's actually a marker of cognitive health. The healthiest brains are the ones that switch fluidly between the two. When you are genuinely focused on something in front of you, a problem, a conversation, a physical task, drive is running and drift quiets down. Your prefrontal cortex is engaged. You're present. When you're not actively focused on anything external, drift takes the wheel. And drift left unguided has a negativity bias baked in. It's going to spend more time on the threat than on the positive, more time on the ambiguous exchange than on the 10 interactions that went totally fine. This is actually survival designed. Your ancestors didn't need to remember the positive interactions, they needed to remember the threats. To stay alive, you had to be vigilant about what went wrong. But you're not living in the savannah anymore. And that same vigilance in your modern life becomes rumination. This is the loop you're stuck in. Your drift keeps picking up the conversation because it was flagged as unresolved and socially ambiguous. It's searching for closure, and every time drift picks it up and runs it through again without reaching a clear conclusion, it doesn't actually get closer to resolution. It just reinforces the groove. The research on this is consistent. Studies using functional MRI show that the more times you replay an ambiguous social situation without reaching an actual resolution, the more strengthened that neural pathway becomes. The brain is training itself to ruminate more efficiently. You're building muscle memory in the wrong direction. But here's the part that matters. The same neuroplasticity that can trap you in a loop can also liberate you if you train deliberately. So the question is not, how do I stop thinking about this? That's the wrong target. You can't willpower away a rumination loop. Suppression has a rebound. The thought comes back louder. The real question is this: how do I give my brain what it's actually looking for so it can close the loop and move? Here's the pattern that shows up most. People try to resolve the replay by replaying better. They run the conversation again, but this time they say the sharper thing, the clearer thing, the thing that would have landed right. And for about 45 seconds, it feels like relief. The neural reward system lights up. You feel smart. You feel prepared. Then the next version of the scenario loads. What if they took it this way instead? What if they already told someone? What if the silence in the meeting yesterday was about this? That's drift doing what drift does when it doesn't have a real anchor. It generates. And without a deliberate interruption, it keeps generating. Your brain is searching for certainty in a situation that is fundamentally uncertain. The other pattern is avoidance. You push the conversation out of your head when it surfaces. You redirect. You tell yourself you're done thinking about it. You scroll. You work. You distract. And for a while, that works. But suppression has a rebound. The thought comes back louder. Drift is persistent. Neither of these moves trains anything. They're both reactions. What you need is a rep. A rep is a specific, deliberate action you take in response to a trigger. It's short, it's doable, and it creates a new groove over time. That's the whole system. That's mental fitness training. The rep isn't about fixing the conversation or resolving the relationship or getting certainty about what the other person meant. It's about giving your brain a real close instead of an endless loop. Here's your rep. The next time the conversation surfaces, and it will probably today, don't push it away and don't follow it down. Instead, do this. Pull out your phone or a piece of paper. You have 2 minutes. Write 3 sentences. 1 sentence for what you actually wanted from that conversation. Not what happened, what you wanted, what you were hoping for. Recognition, clarity, alignment, connection. Name it. 1 sentence for what you can know for certain right now. Not what you fear, not what you imagine, not what you're afraid they think. What can you actually confirm is true? They said X and you said Y. That's it. Stick to the observable facts. And 1 sentence for the one thing, if anything, that would move this forward in real life. Is there a conversation you need to have? An email to send? A boundary to set? Or is there genuinely nothing to do? That's it. 3 sentences, 2 minutes. What you're doing is pulling drift into drive. You're taking something your brain has been processing in the background where it loops endlessly, and you're making it an active, directed task. You're shifting from default mode to task positive mode. When your brain switches into focused, directed cognition, the neural networks shift. Your prefrontal cortex engages, your drift quiets. You're giving your brain structure. You're removing ambiguity. You're creating closure. You're not solving the relationship. You're not rewriting the conversation. You're not getting certainty about what the other person meant. You're giving your brain a structured way to close. Most of the time, one of three things will happen. You'll realize you actually need to say something to the person, and now you know what it is. Your 3 sentences have clarified the truth. You know what you wanted, what's true, and what needs to happen. Now you can act, or you'll realize there's nothing to do, and the situation is genuinely more resolved than Drift was making it feel. You write it down, you see it clearly, and your brain releases it. The loop closes. Or you'll realize what you wanted from the conversation was something the conversation was never going to be able to give you. Maybe you wanted reassurance, and they were never going to give it. Maybe you wanted them to understand something they don't have the capacity to understand. That's important information, not about them, about where the real work is. Any of those 3 is a better outcome than day 4 of the loop, day 5, day 10. Do this rep every time the conversation surfaces over the next 48 hours. Not once, every time it arises. You're training a response pattern. You're building a new groove. Repetition is how the neural pathway gets established. Every time you do it, you're strengthening your capacity to move from drift to drive. You're training your brain to close loops instead of spinning in them. Here's what's important to understand about this. You are not weak for getting stuck in this loop. Your brain isn't broken. You're not overthinking or too sensitive or stuck in your own head. You have a very normal brain using its normal operating system on a situation that was ambiguous and unresolved. And that normal brain pattern is trainable. The replay loop is not a character flaw. It's an untrained pattern running on a very normal neural architecture. And like any pattern, it responds to deliberate practice. Your nervous system, your default mode network, your prefrontal cortex, those are all trainable systems. The research on neuroplasticity is overwhelming. The brain changes with practice. Your capacity to notice drift, to pull yourself into drive, to give your brain the closure it's searching for, this is a skill, and skills are built with reps. If you want a structured place to train this, not talk about it, train it. Start at getforte.com. The whole system is built around reps like this one, short, specific, grounded in what your brain is actually doing. Not fixing you, equipping you. Mental fitness is proactive training. It's built for the moment before the loop takes over, the moment when you can still steer. Train within. Start training at getforte.com.